All right. Good afternoon, evening, everybody. I am Paige with the San Diego Brewers Guild, and I've got my counterpart, Lindsey, with MIHO here today. We are having our dinner tonight with White Labs. We've got Jacob, and then, of course, we've got Carmine from MIHO to help us through the guided tasting. Lindsey, what do we do here?
So for those of you that participated in last week's dinner, Belching Beaver, you met Carmine and we had a great conversation with them. So we've been loving this Zoom format and I hope you guys are too. Paige and I are kind of here just to support and to ask questions and to dig a little deeper with these pairings. So you are watching this. Hopefully your dinner has either arrived, you selected delivery or pickup. You've got your 4 courses there. Everything is served family style. Some of the dishes are warm and some of them are cold. They should have been served how you are supposed to enjoy them. So typically we will say this is a warm dish. You can put that in the microwave if you need to reheat it or transfer it to an oven safe dish, reheat it. But it is family style. So you'll want to get that ready for dinner, set it up on different plates, crack open your first beer, split the beers. You'll also notice the 4th course, we've got a crowler in there. So that is 32 ounces. That's a lot of beer. Do not feel pressure. I'm telling you this up front. Do not feel pressure that you have to drink all that. But anyway, going back to Carmine, our executive sous chef here at MIHO Catering. You met her and I kind of told you a little bit about her last week, but she is an amazing chef here at MIHO. She's a mom, skateboarder, total badass. And she also, I'm going to throw in another fun tidbit. She teaches classes on the side. So she's an instructor too. So Carmine.
Yes, I'm a busy woman. But yeah, I love to teach. Something that I did right after I left working in restaurants. And yeah, so I'm molding the future minds of culinarians.
And Jacob, tell us a little bit about your role at White Labs and a little bit of background on White Labs, because you guys are a very interesting company.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Jacob Hoover, and I am the Education Experience Supervisor at White Labs. So I do a lot of work with classes that we put on, both for the public and beer nerds, homebrewers, up to professional level courses. I also now supervise and manage the tasting room. So if you come in for a beer, you'll see me there. We've been working hard through COVID, to follow guidelines and stay open. So that's been an interesting process, but the challenges have been fun at the same time. And so yeah, kind of a fun job. I feel very lucky and I love coming to work and I love what I do. Talking about beer and also incorporating science into that is a lot of what we do. And that's a lot of what I'm passionate about. So love teaching as well. Similar to Carmine about beer and food and flavor science and things like that. White Labs is a really cool company because it's a San Diego born company back in 1995, and it was founded by homebrewers. 2 of them went on to start, well, they didn't found White Labs, but 2 of the friends of Chris White, our founder, were the founders of Ballast Point. And then Chris went on to start White Labs around the same time. He at the time was selling them homebrew vials of yeast to sell at the home brew mart, and one thing led to another, and now we're selling yeast around the world to breweries, wineries, mead, cider, any kind of fermentation beverage, distilling, kombucha. So we're a yeast manufacturing company, a yeast supplier, an ingredient company, and in that process, to help us learn more about yeast and the way they ferment and play a role in beer, we have also founded White Labs Brewing Co. Back in 2011, 2012, which supplies beer to our tasting room here in San Diego, as well as to our restaurant out in Asheville, North Carolina. And that's where my job comes into play a lot, combining the yeast and the beer side of things, and allows us to do fun things like this and partner up with MIHO and the Brewers Guild to put on this dinner for you guys.
So can people buy your beer on the shelves, or do they have to go to the tasting room?
At this time, they have to go to the tasting room. We just started canning beer for the first time this summer, and it was due to COVID. We wanted people to be able to experience our tasting room niche style of service, which is we take the same base beer, we split it in half, and then we ferment the same beer with 2 different yeast strains, allowing you to taste the difference that the yeast causes through fermentation, side-by-side comparison with everything else being the same. And without being able to come in and taste on site, you can't really do that anymore. So we started canning 4-packs where we do the split batch, you get 2 cans of each. Unfortunately, we don't have those on shelves. We don't have much of distribution or anything like that, just small time can runs, and you'll have to come to the tasting room to experience it.
Which is exciting why we're doing this beer dinner. And I think that as we get into the courses, we see that comparison, right? With the first 2 courses is it is the same base beer, and then you've just changed the yeast strains in either one. And so, you know, compared to a typical beer dinner where we would say first beer, first course, you drink these 2 together, this one's going to be a little bit more interesting because we're allowing the guests to kind of explore that crossover between the first course and the second course, and even the beers side by side, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I hope it blows some people's minds, because I know that I still get excited. I've been here for 3 years and I still get excited every time a new beer comes on tap and I get to try the strains side by side, because it really is a pretty significant difference in the most of the beers we put on. And I can't wait to see how that plays out with the food aspect too. And whether maybe they both work with one or they don't work with either or something, you know, it's going to be a very cool experience.
Sure. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the first beer?
So the first beer we have is our dark lager with WOP 800 Pilsner lager yeast. The dark lager beer that we produce here, we kind of originated just because we wanted to drink it. A lot of people here like the style of like a German Schwarz beer, or a darker lager that has a lot of flavor, but is still drinkable and refreshing at the same time. And we also like featuring lager strains, because lager strains tend to not produce as much flavor and variance in beers, but we like to showcase that they still can create a wide range of flavor profiles and aromas, as seen in the dark lagers here. And this strain produces a really clean, what we call clean, just means not a lot of flavors imparted from the fermentation. Ideally, you just want the hops or the malt, depending on the style, to shine through. And what you're going to see here is we're using a variety of malt called caramel malts. And this strain is really good at pulling these dark red fruit characters like prune and dates out of this beer, as well as giving you this nice caramelly, nutty cocoa malt character. And it's just delicious. And all that then finishes clean and refreshing at the same time. So it's not really rich. It is a semi-sweet beer, so there's some residual sweetness felt on the tongue, but it has a good amount of bitterness, like a moderate level of bitterness that then cleans that away and makes you want to take another sip.
Yum. Paige, are you drinking now or what?
I can.
Paige has crowlers. Just show us.
I did stop by White Labs tasting room yesterday and pick up some crowlers in preparation for today, so I can pop it open and everyone can see the color and do them.
Yeah. Carmine, will you tell us about the kale and kumquat salad?
Yes. So we are serving the beer with a kale and kumquat, so baby kale. We're pickling the kumquats, pomegranates, shaved onions, spring onion, toasted cashews, Gorgonzola cheese, and topped with a maple date vinaigrette. So playing off of some of the notes and, you know, the style of fermentation, it pairs well, from what I've read, pairs well with earthy blue cheese. So the Gorgonzola is really great because it's like a triple cream. It is a triple cream cheese, but you get that tang from the blue. On top of that, a maple date vinaigrette. But what's great about this vinaigrette, we do add gochujang, which is a red pepper paste, a Korean red pepper paste. So it just adds a little bit of an umami, a little bit of a spice, but at the end, it's typically a sweet finish. So lots of balances. Because we're pickling the kumquats, you do kind of get a little bit of bitterness from the kumquats, especially from the skin. So we're pickling that. So we're kind of, you know, emphasizing the flavors, but a little bit of natural sweetness will come through.
And I think those date flavor hooks will really
Yeah.
strengthen that dish. I love
Mhm.
the like similarities between the two, and especially like the bitterness. Jacob, we really tried to ferment a lot of stuff in this dinner, if you didn't notice.
Oh, I saw that and I cannot wait. That's so exciting.
I was telling Jacob earlier of my weird kimchi and sauerkraut habits. I've got like 6 different types of fermented cabbage in my fridge right now. And I was like, Jacob's the only one that's going to appreciate that. No one else.
Yeah, when you told me that, I was like, oh, this is the person that I need to be working with for this. I was like, this is perfect. She'll know exactly what we want to do here.
Yeah. Tell us about the second beer.
All right, so second beer, we are doing the dark lager again. This is with our WLP 810 San Francisco lager yeast. So when we name these strains and these product numbers and codes, a lot of times they're geographical locations. These strains are naturally selected by brewers and used over and over and over to create the beer that we've been drinking as humans for hundreds of thousands of years. So they hail from different areas of the world and they produce different flavor profiles, and they do different things at different temperatures, and you kind of tailor your brewing process around them. And this one's really cool because it's what we consider to be more of like a hybrid strain where you can ferment. Lagers are typically fermented colder, and you can raise the temperature a little bit on this one and not have to worry about too many nasty flavors coming out. So it's a really fun strain to work with, and you can produce a lot of different styles with it. In this beer, it produces a very different example than the 800. I hope everyone perceives that when tasting them. It's not as complex. When I was talking about the 800, I said there's a lot of this like dark red fruit character and this really rich malt character, and then it finishes clean and there's some bitterness. This one is very singular in its flavor. It just tastes immediately like malts, like almonds, cocoa, and a little hint of vanilla, which is kind of unique compared to the other strain. But you don't get a lot of that dark red fruit, and you don't get as much bitterness. You perceive a little bit more sweetness in this one. And I think that's just a lot to do with the strain produces a little bit more flavor character than the 800. So you might be able to get some underlying like red apple skin and pear notes. That's very common for what's called esters or yeast derived flavors. Very commonly like that palmy fruit character. And you can get that, and that kind of enhances the sweetness and diminishes the bitterness a little bit. So look for that when you're tasting this pairing.
And Carmine, what are we pairing this with?
We're pairing it with the blackened beef carpaccio. To that, we are serving it with golden sauerkraut, a little bit of chili oil, and then just Maldon salt to finish on top, and then an herb salad just to give it some color. But with this one, it's interesting because reading on the notes, best paired with yellow curry and potato. So I can see like strong flavors. And then, potatoes usually kind of mellow these flavors down, but also add a little creamy flavor to it or creamy finish. So with this, getting these yellow curry flavors, so our golden sauerkraut is made, we got turmeric, we have ginger, so lots of flavor to that. And also it's salted. So with the beef carpaccio, we're adding some blackening spice. So it's lots of strong flavors in there, but it goes well with the beef because beef carpaccio is just seared, cooked to rare to mid-rare, sliced thinly. So I think the pairing of everything together, the beer will just wash it all down, and it'll be quite refreshing.
I'd say tasting this, I can imagine that the sweetness that Jacob was talking about with the light vanilla and fruit characteristics are going to help with those stronger flavors that are actually in the food. So it's a very like complementary pairing.
Totally. And when you think of lagers, a lot of times you think of lower intensity beers. They're not super flavorful, but these for a lager are pretty high in intensity. They, that on the scale, they're up there. So they will match well with a blackened seasoning and with a highly spiced or like a lot of seasoning in a sauerkraut and things like that. There is a little bit of acidity as well in the 810 that goes along with the sweetness. And I think that will pair really nicely with the sauerkraut, and then also cleanse your palate from the beef.
Nice.
The other thing I like about dark lagers is like this time of year, you want that like toasty flavor profile that's good sitting by the fire with a little bit of sweetness. Like it's just a good winter beer. It fits really well with the weather, and you don't like Jacob was saying, you don't typically see a lot of them. So it's nice seeing our San Diego brewers starting to make some more of them, especially this time of year. It just seems to warm the tummy.
Oh yeah, that's what I love about the style so much is, during this time, I don't always want to drink a big imperial stout or a big porter. And this kind of mimics some of those flavor elements in those beers, but you can at the same time have 2 or 3 and not have to worry too much about what you're doing, something at the end.
Or like other styles that are, like a super hop forward, citrusy, juicy IPA isn't necessarily something you want when it's raining outside. You want, like that's like a really nice spring and summer beer. And it just, I really enjoyed dark lagers in the winter, just since San Diego doesn't really have a winter. So when we do, it's really nice to enjoy beer. And if you do have a little bit left over from the first course, I would recommend, grabbing some of that and trying it with the second course, or and to see how the flavor profiles between the 2 dark lagers work with the 2 different courses, without it just being side by side drinking, but also with the food aspect.
Yeah, definitely. The cool thing about these beers is, they are different and they do have different flavor profiles, and who knows, one might pair better with one course over the other, but it'd be fun for everyone at home to experiment and try them side by side and see which combination you prefer the most.
We'll be doing an Instagram poll after that. And all right, Jacob, tell us about the third beer.
Cool.
Of course.
So third beer is our Better Haze Ahead Hazy IPA. These beers we canned for the first time this summer, and like I was saying, we didn't can before, so it was our first time ever doing it. We were really excited about this and the name because of just the time that everyone's been going through, kind of playing to like better days ahead. Hoping that we can get back to some normalcy here soon. And in that excitement, we're also using a strain that we've been excited about all year. I know if you're in the brewing industry, you hear a lot about what's called Vike yeast. These are ale strains. They are Saccharomyces cerevisiae ale strains, but they are from Norway. And these are pulled from farms, predominantly family farmers or families that have a brewing tradition that they've been doing this for hundreds of years. And it's usually just a single guy who has this yeast sitting around at their house. And we've been fortunate enough they've been fortunate to give us some, as well as a lot of other yeast manufacturers and people in the brewing industry to play around with. And we found that these strains are very unique in that they can ferment at extremely hot temperatures that other yeast strains cannot. And yeast usually can only ferment ale strains around 70 degrees Fahrenheit or a little bit less. And these are able to go up to 100 degrees, 105 degrees, and still produce a really tasty, flavorful beer without too many what we call off flavors or chemical like aromas and flavors. So this is a really exciting beer. And it's going to be what we call here like a fruit basket, just a ton of tropical fruit aroma. It has some citrus acidity character to it as well, which is really nice. So you're getting notes like pineapple, mango, melon, apricot, grapefruit, things like that. The bitterness on it is a little bit higher. So we got about a medium high bitterness. And there is a subtle earthy, grassy aroma, which comes a lot from adding hops late in the process of making the beer. And I think this will all play really nicely with the course that Carmine has prepared for you and the lamb. And I'll let her explain that a little bit too.
We are serving lamb tagine. So traditional Moroccan style. However, I'm not cooking it in the triangular tagine pot. However, we are practicing the braising cooking techniques for this one. So in the sauce, we have tomatoes, we have apricots in there, carrots, onions. But the main flavoring component is the ras al hanout, which is basically I think there's like about at least 12, 15 spices in there. I mean, we have cardamom, we have cumin, coriander, clove, cinnamon, nutmeg, paprika, turmeric, allspice, in that just one ras el hanout spice. So you get nice, warm, earthy tones, flavoring. And then we're going to top it off or serve it with some Israeli couscous. So kept it simple, kind of like because the sauce is going to be a little, it's going to be a saucy dish. But with that couscous, we're going to marinate it with or pair it with some lemon preserve, some mint. So it's definitely you're gonna have like a heavy dish, or the heavy sauce, and then you get the freshness from the couscous and then the preserved lemon. But on top of that, we are going to serve it with a green onion and pepita chutney. So in that chutney, we're gonna grill the green onions. Inside that chutney, we also have bean cherries to that. There is a little bit of fish sauce, which is kind of random, but it, again, a little bit more of a umami flavor, just something that it's not going to be fishy. It's just going to give that little extra oomph to it. And then just for some crisp freshness, we're just going to serve it with a fennel slaw. So yeah.
Sounds
Delicious.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this dish because I think there's a lot of elements that, when you think of compare, contrast, and cut, when you're talking about beer and food, I think this will satisfy all those three in so many different ways. There's a lot going on, so I'm really excited to see how it comes out for everyone.
Cool.
And I think with like the citrus notes that you were talking and the fruit flavors that you were talking about earlier, Jacob, with the pineapple and the apricot and all of that will really help complement the flavors that are in that spice blend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try to say it because I'm going to butcher the phrase, but I think a lot of that the beer will help complement. And if it's a little spicy, it sounds like there might be a little bit of it, and it might be cut down by the beer to really enjoy, and help with maybe some of those lingering flavors to clean your palate between each bite. I don't know if
definitely with that chutney, it's gonna
yeah.
just clean your palate, and then once you drink that beer, you'll be able to. It's not going the dish itself is not going to mask the beer at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm excited about this one for sure.
And then with the fourth course, I know this is where the crowler comes in, and this is like the part where maybe you just say time out. You're not going to crack the crowler because it is a lot of beer. So Paige has a bottle of this Franken stout, which she can share and show. And then Jacob can tell us a little bit about the crowler that you'll get and what that beer tastes like.
Yeah, so Franken stout is an awesome beer. I guarantee you won't find anything like it anywhere else. It's very unique to White Labs. It's a very White Labs on-brand beer. And that's because a few years ago, there was a huge project that our R&D team took on where we were genetically sequencing a lot of our yeast strains that we offer. And they created a tree to show, where they came from and if they were similar to each other, which ones were less similar, and things like this. And in that, we were able to have a culture of 96 different strains produced to make beer with. So our lab team grew it up and we pitched it into a beer, and that is what created Franken stout. So, most beer is fermented with one strain. There might be a few that use a blend that contains a few different strains, but I can guarantee there's no beer on the market with 96. So this is a very unique tasting experience. We love drinking it and talking about it with people. We have a lot of customers that come in specifically for this beer, and the bottle that Paige showed you guys was a vintage 2019. We released it October 2019 and put it in those bottles, something we never do, similar to the canning. And we still have a few of those left if anyone's interested, but it changes over time considerably, and I think gets better with age as well. In this example, it's a little bit fresher in the crowler, and using 96 yeast strains, it dries the beer out a lot. So the yeast will eat a lot of those sugars and create a rather dry finish, which will give you a good punch and kick of bitterness. You don't typically see that in a lot of, big dessert-like imperial stouts, but it's kind of nice for this. And I think it'll be nice in this pairing because that bitterness and then the fat and sugar in the cake or in the, in the spice cake with the pear and everything, it'll really contrast nicely. And you're getting tons of roasted like mocha and like you think like a mocha coffee drink, caramel. There's some bitter dark chocolate notes in there, but the main flavor and aroma profile in this beer is derived from yeast. And it's almost like an allspice, nutmeg, herbally. I call it like potpourri, and what you would think of Christmas time as. That is, as soon as you put the beer anywhere near your nose, you're going to get a hit of that. And it always goes nice with desserts. I have not eaten something sweet with it that I haven't enjoyed. It's not too overpowering. There's a ton of dark red fruit like cherries and plums, stone fruit, things like that in there as well. So it's just a really great beer to eat with anything that contains a lot of sugar and is at the end of a meal.
Is it the same 96 yeast strains every single year, or do you guys diversify it at all year over year? Since you said the one that I have is like a 2019, or just curious.
Yeah, it's the same blend every time that's propagated or grown up. But the main difference that you'll see from batch to batch, because you will see differences, is because those strains, when they're growing, they're competing, and they're not always going to grow to the same levels. So like as an example, say, each strain contained 3% of each strain at one point. Well, maybe the next time there'll be 5% of that strain or 10% of that strain.
Okay.
Which will then in turn change the flavor profile of the beer. So that's why this beer is so cool, because, from a consistency standpoint, it's not a great thing to do, but that's not what we're worried about. We just love making it and seeing what comes out, and it's always really tasty.
Well, Frankenstout is the perfect name for that, because you have no idea what you're getting year over year.
Exactly, yeah.
And how long have you been making it?
They've been making Frankenstout since 2014, I believe.
Okay.
So a good amount of years. At one point, we had a Franken IPA on tap as well. But in the more recent years, we've just been doing the Frankenstout, and it's always a fan favorite. So if you haven't tried it before, definitely, I know it's in a crawler, and I know we said, if you don't want to, you don't have to open it, but be excited for when you do open it, because it's really tasty.
What I've started doing with dessert is eating it the next day. So that way I can enjoy all of the beer, and, have something to look forward to instead of eating everything at once.
Yeah.
Spreading it out is kind of nice over the weekend.
Yeah.
I like that.
And Carmine, do you want to go into the spiced cake a
Yes.
little bit?
Well, I want you guys to burn your candle, your fall candle, close your eyes and eat this cake. So it's our spice cake with poached pear, pumpkin cream, and papita brittle. So, Jacob said it best, the pairing of, something light, but also creamy to help cut through that bitterness. But it's a very simple dessert, to be honest. I think it'll complement very well with the beer. The creaminess, the sweetness to kind of cut the bitterness. So I think it's a great compliment. But again, burn your incense, burn that candle, close your eyes and eat this cake, or save it for the next day, like Paige said.
It's simple too, because I couldn't make that at home. Like pepita brittle, I'm not making pepita brittle. That's not simple. Come on.
But it sounds like, from what both of you have said, is like, the flavors of nutmeg and that Christmassy pumpkin, just like, again, the warm the spice cake. So
eat it by the fire.
Yes, all of that.
With your blanket.
Beer cake.
Yes.
Yeah.
The temperature is right for it. So, for San Diego at least.
Yeah.
I know. Hopefully it rains this weekend.
That would be nice.
Okay, Jacob, I have a question, and it might be a dumb question, but where does yeast come from?
Oh, not a dumb question. You can find, I mean, yeast is on everything. It's a living organism. It's a fungi, and it's actually closer in relation to a human cell than it is to bacteria, even though, you know, on a microscopic level, it's much closer to bacteria. But DNA wise, it's really close to us, and you find it mainly on fruits in the wild. If you're making beer with what's called, you know, if you ever seen like a wild aged beer, you know, wild ferment or something like that on the label, a lot of those cultures are pulled from fruits.
Like a tapache.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you can really find it. I mean, even in dust, there's yeast. There's just so many different kinds too. There's over, I think it's like 1,500 species of yeast. So, um, yeah. I mean, we one time we swabbed a brewer's beard up in the Pacific
Ew.
Northwest and plated it and then propagated it up, and they brewed a beer and they called it beard beer.
Ew.
You can, yeah.
They have a lot of fun at White Labs.
Hopefully everyone's done eating if that part's in there. Yeah, so you can find it anywhere. I hope that answers the question.
How was the beard beer?
This was before my time.
Oh,
I just know the story. I wasn't part of it and I didn't get to try it. I think it was with Rogue Brewing.
oh, it sounds like something that they would be interested in doing.
Yeah.
Having fun like that.
Unfortunately, I missed out. I didn't get to try it, but I would have tried it. I would have been curious to see. I'm sure it might have just been some of their own yeast that had, you know, gotten out of the brewery, and
Oh,
I don't know. Good times.
That's funny. All right.
Good
Well,
question, though. That's not a dumb question.
yeah.
Paige, do you have any other questions or any?
I guess, I mean, the same sort of question can go to Carmine of like, you know, in cooking, how, you know, being experimental with yeast or fermentation, like how can people like kind of play with that at home if they're not professional chefs or, you know, that sort of thing if it's
Yeah. No, I agree with what Jacob said. Basically, anything that has an outer skin typically or does have yeast in it. I mean, what I've been taught through fermentation of food, you know, yes, you know, buy organically, but also don't wash it so thoroughly because you are going to be removing some of that yeast, which would help with the fermentation process. But if you're looking into just starting your own type of fermentation at home, sauerkraut is quite simple. I mean, really, you just need salt and, you know, whatever you're cooking. Oftentimes I do kimchi. It's complex, but it's quite simple. You know, I think people get scared of like leaving things out. You know, again, you know, living organism, you want it at room temperature so it can live and, you know, survive. For those who really want to get into fermenting or canning or pickling, I suggest It's Alive with Brad on YouTube, and he is super thorough. I believe, I forget which company he's from, but he makes it fun. But you know, really, it's just you just need salt and just let it sit. And you know, from there you can just add your flavors to that. You know, it's all about practicing and letting it sit at room temperature, letting it burp.
I think sometimes people are afraid to let things grow on their food.
Yeah, there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, but you know, I work in a kitchen, so I got a strong gut. So I've tried some terrible things and spoiled things. So yeah, I mean, that just regular cooking is all about just trying and really pushing yourself to try new flavors.
Yeah, we do a lot of cool stuff with our restaurant out in Nashville. We do like another use for yeast that we do is we use the same strain that we have in the hazy IPA. in our bread or our pizza dough. So we do a 72-hour ferment. It takes a little bit longer, but it does create a pretty unique crust, and they have a wood-fired oven there. And that's like the highlight of the restaurant there is the pizzas they make with our yeast, our brewer strain in their pizza dough. It's pretty cool.
Sounds awesome. When are they going to open a restaurant out here? Someday.
You never know. It might happen sooner than you think. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Got our eyes on you.
Can't say too much.
Very cool. Well, thank you both for taking the time, or all three of you for taking the time and chatting with us and explaining this beer dinner. I'm so excited about this and all the fermented goodness that's about to happen. That's all I got.
And I hope people really enjoy the White Labs experience at home, you know, being able to taste the two beers, the dark lagers with course 1 and 2 next to each other. And hopefully, you know, watching this video, you can stop between each course and really try to taste the flavors that we went over earlier, and then be able to compare them, and so that you can see the power of yeast between the two beers, since we're not able to all be together and do it together. So definitely had an amazing time with putting this dinner together. I think it's unique to San Diego beer to have White Labs here and such a part of our beer community, and I feel like I'm really grateful for that. So thank you, Jacob, for being here, and Carmine and Lindsey for putting together such an awesome menu for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for all your work on this.
All right. Thank you. And we'll see you guys.
Cheers. I don't know what beer, but cheers. Kevin.
Always trying to take my thunder, you know?
Kevin, man.